All right, let's be real. All this talk about Comet 3 Atlas. For months they told us, nothing to worry about, just another rock flying by. Spectacular, sure, but harmless. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. The universe is never just harmless for no reason. And the numbers we're getting back from the James Webb Telescope, they just don't add up. Not at all. At first, everything looked standard. On July 1st, they spotted an object, Interstellar, moving at an insane speed, almost 87 kilometers per second. That's unbelievably fast. To give you some perspective, at that speed, you could get from the Earth to the Moon in less than an hour and a half. But the speed isn't the weirdest part. The weirdest part is its behavior. Comets don't act like this. They slow down. They break apart. But this thing, it started to speed up. Just a little at first, but consistently. And then its trajectory got cleaner, like someone was adjusting its course. Spectral analysis showed energy spikes, CO2 bursting out at a rate we've never seen before. This isn't like melting ice. It's more like an engine firing. And then the Webb, our best eye on the cosmos, sent back data that changes everything. Rhythmic pulses, every 17 minutes, like clockwork. You have to understand, these aren't random gas burps. These are deliberate, measured thrusts. It's maneuvering. And here's where we are now. What was supposed to be a safe flyby isn't so safe anymore. The new trajectory takes it just a couple million kilometers from Mars. In space terms, that's nothing. Our models show that one more push, a small one, just 10 kilometers per second, and the trajectory shifts to a direct impact. Think about the physics here. This thing is using its own gas emissions like micro-thrusters. It's course correcting. And these thrusts are perfectly timed with Mars's orbital plane. It's not just flying, it's aiming. So we're not watching a comet anymore. We're watching an object making precise maneuvers to hit the red planet. And the window for that final burn is open until the end of September. People need to get this. We're past the point of a cool light show. We're talking about an object moving through our solar system that's acting like a spacecraft. And it's heading for the planet we're planning to make our second home. Whatever it is, it's clearly not done here. And frankly, that's a serious wake-up call. It's not just amateur theorists or sci-fi fans sounding the alarm anymore. Harvard astrophysicist Avi Loeb and his team published a paper making a bold claim. 3 Atlas might be an artificial probe. The data is backing them up. Radar signals bounced off the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, and the Goldstone antennas came back with a metallic echo, not the soft, watery signatures of a normal comet. Internal NASA sources describe the radar reflections as unlike anything we've ever seen. Add to that the green, needle-like streams seen in amateur long-exposure photos. 3 glowing beams converging on Mars, pulsing in time with the exhaust jets, and the picture becomes undeniable. This object is not acting naturally. Loeb suggests a scenario where 3 Atlas could be intentionally targeting Mars to crash, or worse, to deliver something. Probes, signals, spores, whatever it is, this is no coincidence. Mars is being approached with surgical precision, and humanity is just a spectator to an operation it barely understands unfolding right before its eyes. What happens if it hits? The answer is almost beyond comprehension. With a mass estimated at 10 billion tons and a velocity of 57 kilometers per second relative to Mars, the impact would release over 2 million megatons of energy. That's thousands of times more powerful than the largest nuclear explosion in Earth's history. The crater would be 60 kilometers wide, 5 kilometers deep, and would throw debris all over Mars's orbit, some of which could be ejected into interplanetary space. And yes, that means some of it could eventually reach Earth. but the consequences go way beyond rocks and dust. Mars is home to dozens of scientific instruments, rovers, orbiters, life detection experiments, decades of climate records. An impact wouldn't just destroy machines, it would wipe out decades of research, blind our communication systems, and potentially trigger contamination events we are completely unprepared for. The ESA, Roscosmos, CNSA, and JAXA have all initiated planetary defense discussions, not against an alien fleet, but against a single object that's behaving way too much like a vehicle. For years, scientists have theorized that Mars once had life, and that it might still be hiding deep beneath its rusty surface. Subsurface lakes, dormant microbes, ancient ecosystems locked under the permafrost. This is one of the main reasons we've sent so many rovers, orbiters, and landers. But if 3 Atlas hits, all of that becomes a biological unknown. The extreme heat from the impact won't just vaporize the surface, it will fracture deeper layers of the Martian crust, exposing reservoirs we've never reached. And if 3 Atlas is carrying organic molecules or, worse, synthetic biology embedded in its gas plumes, the fusion of non-terrestrial evolution with Martian biology could lead to planetary-scale genetic contamination. Some biologists call this reverse panspermia. Not life spreading from Mars to Earth, but life being deliberately seeded onto Mars. It raises a terrifying question. What if the goal was never destruction? What if the object is a delivery system, and Mars is the incubator? As 3 Atlas approached its closest point to Mars, the James Webb Telescope focused on the object for one final, ultra-deep scan. The result was classified for 48 hours before a portion of it was released, but leaks from the Webb project tell a much darker story. The NIR spec and MIRI instruments detected traces of synthetic polymers, molecules resembling terrestrial plastics and carbon nanotubes mixed in with the natural gases. These are not structures that form in a vacuum or through cometary heating. They're manufactured materials. Webb's spectrographs also picked up persistent isotopic anomalies, especially in carbon and hydrogen, that don't match any known object in the solar system. In short, 3 Atlas contains things that shouldn't exist in space, and it's all heading straight for a planet that might still be alive. The Webb data was privately shared with major space agencies. Emergency task forces were convened, not because we could stop it, but because we were running out of time to understand what it actually was. As panic mounted, NASA made a surprising move. Silence. The usual press releases stopped. Gaps appeared in the telemetry data from Perseverance and Tianwen-1. Questions about potential impact scenarios were redirected. Something had changed. And then, in a classified transmission later leaked by an internal whistleblower, came the phrase, "Impact Protocol Initiated." What does that mean? No one knows for sure, but insiders claim that a series of encrypted signals were sent from Earth-based stations to all functioning hardware on Mars. Curious, given that there's no known way to deflect or intercept 3 Atlas, unless, of course, the purpose of those signals wasn't to protect Mars, but to prepare it. If 3 Atlas is an intelligent system, even a semi-autonomous one, it might be responsive to energy signatures, orbital beacons, or coded pulses. And if Earth just turned those systems on, we might have just confirmed that we're listening. Worse, we might have just confirmed that we're answering. And whatever intelligence is behind this object, if any, now knows that we know. A team of cryptographers at the SETI Institute did something no one had considered. They took the current trajectory, the time of closest approach, the velocity, and the gravitational vectors, data known to every astronomer on Earth, and translated it into binary code. Then they applied standard compression algorithms used in deep space messaging. What came out was more than just random data. It was structured, repetitive information. It contained a series of numerical intervals that correspond to atomic numbers: 6, 8, 14, 26, carbon, oxygen, silicon, iron, the building blocks of both life and machines. But interspersed between them were prime number countdowns and intervals corresponding to recursive messaging protocols. In short, the entire flight path of 3 Atlas might be a signal in motion, a message delivered not by radio, but by behavior, by time, by presence. This would mean we're not just observing a trajectory to Mars. We are witnessing a communicative event, and the impact window itself is part of the message. If it hits, that's one sentence. If it misses, it's another. And either way, the answer is already written in the stars. As the projected impact path narrowed, planetary scientists noticed a chilling coincidence. The updated trajectory of 3 Atlas intersected a narrow corridor that passes directly over Elysium Planitia, a geologically young region of Mars known for its unusually symmetrical surface features. Satellite images have shown concentric ridges, spiral-shaped flows, and formations that eerily mimic Fibonacci patterns. They weren't new, but what caught everyone's attention was that the exact descent vector of 3 Atlas aligned with a central depression, a perfectly circular basin less than 3.5 kilometers wide. No known impact signature, no volcanic remnants, but perfectly centered in this basin was a deposit of crystalline silicates with refractive indexes found nowhere else on Mars. When hit by solar radiation, they emit short pulses of infrared light at regular intervals. Most considered it a geological curiosity. But now, scientists are asking, was this basin a random feature, or was it a beacon, a meeting point? And if so, who set the coordinates? Just as the James Webb focused on 3 Atlas again from its alternate tracking point, an unexpected anomaly was spotted. Trailing the main body of the object, not physically connected but following at a constant distance of 0.07 astronomical units, was a secondary shadow. It wasn't a debris field. It wasn't gas. It was something darker. Radar couldn't detect it. Infrared sensors couldn't heat it. But photometric analysis showed a sharp drop in light that moved in perfect sync with 3 Atlas, as if tethered by some invisible force. This shadow maintained its precise distance, unaffected by gravity or acceleration, and when visualized in polar coordinates, it formed a perfect orbital trail. Something was following 3 Atlas, not escorting, not pushing, but mirroring. Speculation exploded. Was it a secondary object? A drone? A gravitational echo or something else entirely? A field? A memory? A protocol? For the first time, researchers began to consider the idea that 3 Atlas might not be the main actor in this cosmic event, but simply the carrier of something more elusive. As all eyes were fixed on the projected impact date, an even more disturbing pattern emerged. When scientists mapped the entire trajectory of 3 Atlas and its closest approaches to the Sun, Earth, and Mars, they found that each alignment fell on dates of astronomical resonance, key orbital harmonics studied by ancient civilizations for centuries. September 23rd, October 5th, November 11th. These dates not only correspond to seasonal equinoxes and transits, but also to rare gravitational synchronicities that occur in 54-year cycles. In fact, the last time all 3 inner planets were in similar orbital positions during a comet's passage was the Tunguska event in 1908. This synchronicity sent a shockwave through the scientific community. How could a random interstellar object arrive at such astronomically significant moments? Unless it wasn't random. Unless it was timing its arrival, as if following a clock not made by human hands. This wasn't a celestial coincidence. It was a pattern. And patterns in space are always a sign of design. One final discovery pushed the conversation into territory once considered taboo in mainstream science: consciousness in motion. A team of neurocosmologists at Princeton studying neural synchronization patterns in deep meditative states noticed something extraordinary. When subjects were exposed to the pulsation frequencies emitted by 3 Atlas's light curve, specifically the 17-minute gas ejection intervals, their brain activity synchronized, not in one subject, but across multiple subjects in different rooms, isolated and unaware of each other. This isn't just resonance, it's neural entrainment, as if the signal wasn't just mechanical, but cognitive. And if it can affect us from millions of kilometers away, what does that say about its origin? Is it possible that 3 Atlas is not a rock, not a spaceship, but a thought moving through the universe like a seed of awareness? A message that isn't read, but felt. Something that activates when it's heard. Something that becomes a part of you the moment you understand it. If this is true, then the impact on Mars, physical or not, might just be a symptom. The real event might already be happening inside of us. As apprehension grew around the potential impact, a small group of archaeoastronomers began cross-referencing 3 Atlas's trajectory with ancient star maps, records not just from Western observatories but from Babylonian, Mayan, and Tibetan cosmological scrolls. What they found was incomprehensible. A pattern emerged across cultures known as the fiery serpent, describing a celestial body that descends from the outer darkness, curves unnaturally around the sun, and targets the red god, Mars. The pattern was repeated on stele carvings and even in cave paintings, each depicting the same winding path. But one set stood out, a pre-Incan calendar stone from Tiahuanaco, showing 4 diverging lines from Mars after the comet's descent. When processed with photogrammetry, these lines match the Webb's projected debris pattern in the event of a Mars impact. What does this mean? That someone somehow foresaw this, not in this century, but thousands of years ago. It suggests that 3 Atlas isn't just passing through history. It might be history repeating itself, and Mars may not be the target. It may be the trigger. Then, something completely unexpected happened. The ExoMars Trace gas orbiter, which had been silent for days to conserve power, detected a spike in xenon isotopes in Mars's upper atmosphere. At first, scientists assumed it was solar radiation, but the composition was all wrong. This stuff wasn't coming from above, it was rising from below. Specifically from deep fissures near Cerberus Fossae, one of the most geologically unstable regions on Mars. Seismic activity spiked. Subsurface temperature readings rose by 3 degrees Kelvin. And, in a twist that left the scientific community in stunned silence, magnetometers detected a faint but structured magnetic pulse that repeated every 17 minutes, the same interval as 3 Atlas's gas ejections. The question was no longer whether the object would hit. The question became whether Mars was already preparing for it, as if the planet wasn't being threatened, but activated. Something inside the crust, dormant for millennia, had just started to wake up. With each passing hour, the idea of an impact became less of a physical event and more of a temporal one. The Webb team noticed that the light fluctuations from 3 Atlas no longer corresponded to a comet's rotation. Instead, they followed a recursive, multi-layered time signature. 7 pulses, a pause, 3 pulses, a pause, 13 pulses, and so on. These numbers weren't random. When graphed, they created a Fibonacci-based spiral, a sequence often associated with organic growth, memory encoding, and even the helix of human DNA. Mathematicians and cryptographers teamed up to decode it and came to a disturbing hypothesis. 3 Atlas was transmitting time, but not in seconds or hours, but in cycles, in epochs. The object wasn't just arriving, it was sinking. The countdown, it turned out, wasn't to an impact, but to a resonance, a convergence of energy, orbit, and consciousness. And if that countdown completes, it might not bring an explosion, but a shift in perception, or perhaps even in the very fabric of reality as we know it. 72 hours before the projected impact, a signal was detected. Low frequency, infrasonic, inaudible to the human ear, but unmistakable in its waveform. It didn't come from space. It didn't even reflect off Mars. It emanated from beneath Olympus Mons, the largest volcano in the solar system. The area, long considered geologically dead, suddenly radiated a structured harmonic frequency independently recorded by ESA, CNSA, and NASA orbiters. The signal matched no known natural phenomenon, but when isolated and visualized as a spectrogram, it formed a spiral, a mirror image of the same waveform 3 Atlas had emitted during its closest approach to the Sun. The scientific community went silent. What does it mean when a planet answers an object before it even arrives? Is Olympus Mons just echoing, or is it communicating? Was Mars waiting for this exact moment? And more importantly, if this is Mars waking up, what happens when it finally opens its eyes? As the final hours ticked away, a curious discovery surfaced from a forgotten data set. An old thermal scan from the Mars Odyssey orbiter, taken nearly 2 decades ago. It showed a faint heat signature beneath the surface of Utopia Planitia, dismissed at the time as noise from solar reflection. But when the same region was rescanned in the wake of 3 Atlas's approach, the heat pattern had not only returned, but it had grown, and now matched the shape of an ancient glyph carved into the rock walls of Candor Chasma Canyon. The glyph, barely visible to the naked eye, depicted a descending spiral impacting a circle with what appeared to be 2 planetary spheres aligned at the moment of contact. The implications were staggering. Mars might not just hold a memory of geology, but of a coded celestial past. What if Mars isn't just a planet? What if it's a recording device, and 3 Atlas is the key to playback? Then, the impossible happened. High-resolution images from the ESA's Mars Express captured movement in the dust fields south of Noctis Labyrinthus. Not wind, not rover activity. Something was rising, a pattern forming in the sand. 2 perfect concentric ovals expanding outward, as if carved from beneath the ground. Over 4 hours, the shapes elongated and shifted until they formed an unmistakable image. An eye tilted at exactly 23.5 degrees, the axial tilt of Earth. The symbolism was stunning. An eye watching us, or a mirror showing us ourselves. Scientists scrambled for answers, but there were none. Mars had just blinked. Not metaphorically, not poetically, physically, deliberately. Something beneath the surface was not only aware, but aware of us, of our geometry, of our orientation, and most disturbingly, of our signal. As if this entire event had been foreseen, perhaps even requested, long before our species ever existed. In one of the last communication windows before signal loss, the James Webb Space Telescope performed a spectral analysis of the molecular trail left by 3 Atlas. Among the volatile organic compounds and carbon chains was something that sent a thrill through every astrobiology lab on Earth. A repeating chain of nucleic acid-based sequences, eerily similar to RNA. Not exact, not terrestrial, but unmistakably structured for replication. A foreign form of prebiotic information, embedded in vapor, drifting through space. And as scientists began to map it, a terrifying possibility emerged. It wasn't just biological, it was responsive. Portions of the chain mirrored human-designed encryption keys. Others resembled known musical intervals, as if the molecule itself was designed to interact with intelligence, to respond to interpretation. This wasn't passive cometary dust. It was living code, built not to survive in space, but to be transmitted through it. Life not as cells, but as language. As 3 Atlas entered its final trajectory arc, the global astronomical network mapped one last alignment. Mars, Earth, and the Sun would briefly form a perfect straight line, with 3 Atlas poised to cross that axis at the exact moment of its solar transit. But this was more than an orbital coincidence. The projection matched ancient megalithic structures found on Earth. Stonehenge, Nabta Playa, Teotihuacan, all pointed to the same triad of celestial angles. For millennia, humans had unknowingly been building monuments in preparation for this very configuration. And now, that alignment was about to repeat, not as myth, but as a mechanism. Mars, the red witness. Earth, the awakened observer. The sun, the eternal source. And 3 Atlas. Not an object, not a rock, but a keystone entering the lock of planetary memory. The final position isn't about destruction, it's about completion. And once it aligns, something will shift. Not out there, but in here. We looked at the sky and thought we saw a comet, a wandering rock, a stray fragment from some forgotten corner of the galaxy. We named it 3 Atlas. We tracked its numbers. We mapped its arc. We told ourselves it was random. But what the James Webb Telescope showed us wasn't random. It was a ritual. This object didn't just arrive. It performed. It aligned. It responded. And as it moved through the solar system, every planet it passed began to whisper back. Signals, pulses, alignments, codes. Mars didn't just react. It remembered. As if this wasn't its first encounter. As if this moment was written into the bones of the planets, into the dust of the craters, into the very pulse of gravity. And now, with one final maneuver, 3 Atlas has moved into position, not to destroy, but to complete something. A pattern, a countdown, a convergence. Mars may be the stage, but Earth, we are the audience. And we were never meant to be passive observers. We were always part of the design. Every telescope we built, every signal we sent, every theory we laughed at, it was all heard. The final impact may not be physical. It may not leave a crater, but it has already begun to change what we thought we knew about Mars, about life, about ourselves. Because in the end, 3 Atlas wasn't coming from Mars. It was coming for our attention. And now that it has it, we have to ask, what happens next? Subscribe, because this story is far from over. Turn on notifications, because what comes next won't be televised. Share this video with someone who still thinks we're alone. And tell us in the comments, do you think 3 Atlas was a coincidence or an invitation? Because maybe, just maybe, Mars isn't about to be struck. Maybe we are.